ओम ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्ति भेदविभागिने योगवर्तनात्मकेताय दक्षिणामूर्ते नमः. Good evening, all of you. So, science, religion, and philosophy seemingly poles apart, and bringing them together and putting them on the same pedestal as different approaches towards reality, that itself is, very repelling for some people. Like it's very repelling and it's very revolutionary for some people, and a lot of people who are very passionate about science, they can't even stand putting these three on the same pedestal. I've been exploring this concept of reality, like in the Western philosophy, what is called as ontology, like what is this that exists, and I've been exploring it for quite some time and reading here and there, and I would confess I'm still learning, I'm still a student, and if next year, if you hear me talking on the same topic, maybe it will be much different. So it's not something which is conclusive, it is not something which is rigid or unchangeable. So what I'm going to share with you is what I have learned so far, what I have understood, maybe misunderstood also, during my explorations in trying to find out what is reality. And this is a quotation, you can go to the next slide, which came across recently. So this is by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. If you expect any benefit from your search, material, mental or spiritual, you have missed the point. Truth gives no advantage. It gives you no higher status, no power over others. All you get is truth and the freedom from the false. So if someone asks, okay, why should you try to know what is the truth? What do you gain by that? Will you get some occult powers? Will you get this, that? So the plain thing is no. The pursuit of truth is just simply because it is truth. So we are not looking for any benefit out of it, because ascribing any benefit to it actually dilutes the whole thing. You will be running into all kinds of bias, and which will make the mind compromise on what you want to search and arrive at as the truth. And by the way, Nisargadatta Maharaj is a great saint who lived in the beginning of the last century. He was in Bombay. He was a great Advaita teacher. And the next slide, I have another quotation. This is about Vedanta. So it is by Romain Rolland. He is a French Nobel laureate. So he says, the true Vedantic spirit does not start out with a system of preconceived ideas. Each man has been entirely free to search wherever he pleased for the spiritual explanation of the spectacle of the universe. So, of course, we can't take it wholly, because his idea about what Vedanta is, but as we see, you will see that though not about preconceived notions, Vedanta does start with some axioms which are pretty logical, reasonable and non-contentable. So we'll be exploring all those things. And also about the quotation by Nisargadatta Maharaj, though the search of truth per se is without any ulterior motives, but still for the sake of the common humanity, there are some things which we want to achieve by this search after the truth. So in the tradition of Vedanta, there are 6 questions based on which we analyze any philosophy, any system of thought. So the first criteria for any system of thought, of course, is that it should be internally consistent. There cannot be internal contradictions in a system of thought. But apart from that, there are a few questions which the system of thought has to answer. So the first is the nature of the individual. Who am I? Right? Who am I? what is my nature? So that is the first question which any system of thought should answer. The second is, what is the nature of the universal? So what is the nature of the whole, right? Whatever, the totality, what is its nature? You may call it by whatever name, like some with a philosophy might call it as the universe, some other philosophy may call it as God, or by whatever name you might call, but you have to answer a question of what is this totality, what is its nature. Then the third is about the insentient world, that is the universe that we see, the physical universe as we see. Now these three address what is the reality. Now how does it address the human problem? So now what is the human problem? So if you put it in that comes to the next question, right? Now there is no doubt that human misery exists. There is no second thought about it. Everyone accepts it. So now the question is, why is there human suffering? So that is one of the questions which any system of philosophy should answer. Now an economic philosophy might put it as, what is the solution to poverty in the world? So that's an economic way of putting in the same question. But the basic question is, why is there human suffering? Then the next question comes, what is the state beyond suffering? So now some philosophies might say like, no, there is no state beyond suffering. That's okay, that's also a valid answer. But this question has to be answered. Is there a state beyond suffering? And if it is so, what is that state? And that leads us to the next question, which is how to reach it, right? So the next question, the last question is how to reach that state beyond suffering. Right? So what is the means to the state which is beyond suffering? So these are the 6 questions which any system of philosophy has to address. Maybe we can just move it slightly so that I think this is fine. Yeah. Okay. So these are the 6 questions which any system of philosophy has to address. So now we use this as the yardstick. So we will use this as the talisman, as it were, to see how science, religion, and Vedanta or philosophy address these 3 questions. Now, science is of course universal. There is no second thought about it. But when it comes to religion and philosophy, there are different religions, there are different philosophies. Now, here in this talk, as mentioned, like we are looking at it from the point of view of Vedanta. Well, why Vedanta? Like, simple reason is because that's what I know about, right? And when we say another reason is like Vedanta is a way of Indian approach to the whole problem, right? And Vedanta is considered as the final thought, the most mature ideas about philosophy and religion, which of the Indian mind, and perhaps maybe the whole world. We'll look into that. So when we say religion, we look at what is classically called as the relativistic Vedanta, that is the empirical Vedanta. And when we say philosophy, what we would consider is the Advaita Vedanta or the Vedanta at the absolute level, right? So, actually, like this whole thing is single thread of thought. So I would like to have the questions at the end because some of the questions might be already answered, right? So let us finish it. Then maybe we can have a long question and answer session. Yeah. Okay, fine. So now let us go to the next slide. Okay. So now science, as we all know, has been tremendously successful in the world. So much so that there is such a huge lopsided development. Like today, if anyone asks anyone, generally if you ask, give the name of 5 geniuses, all that we can think about will be only Newton, Einstein, Stephen Hawking. We'll all think only about scientists. Maybe Steve Jobs will also come into picture. We may think about Steve Jobs also. But we will never think about Shakespeare or Kalidasa or Picasso or, so somehow like science has overwhelmed the entire human thought so much that we don't even think that people who are working in fields other than science can be geniuses. So it has become such an amount of lopsided development, which is not good, of course. But anyway, so science also then has been tremendously successful because of various reasons. So one of them is like it is based strictly on cause and effect. So every effect should be mapped to its causes, and every cause has to have its effects. And then science has a beautiful, rigorous process. So you have you must have learned, the hypothesis, and then you come up with a theory, and then you do some experiments and predict, and then you see the results if they tally. So so it has got a very rigorous process by which science, every concept can be validated. And it has a beautiful system of peer review in research. So, because otherwise anyone can publish anything what he wants. Now the real validity and the weight of what is published comes because of the peer review, because that puts checks and balances into the system, and because of which things which are not acceptable have been easily discarded and questioned. And this is one of the biggest strengths of science, why it has been very successful. And it is universal across cultures. There is nothing called Greek science or Indian science or Chinese science or European science. Like science is universal. And then it has got a beautiful tool called mathematics. And by expressing every scientific concept in the language of mathematics, it ensures that the personal biases of people don't come into the picture. Because mathematics is a beautiful tool to express ideas, and it becomes a very rigorous and logical way so that you can be logically consistent within yourself. Otherwise, the human mind is so fickle and feeble that if you try to put 5 statements together, there is all possibility that they are mutually contradictory. And having maths in between has given science a tremendous strength, where irrespective of the personal biases, irrespective of the personal moods of the person, maths don't lie, numbers don't lie. Like say for example, a researcher might have had a quarrel with his brother in the day, and that doesn't affect his results because there is a math in between which is there to filter all the personal emotions and bring sort of objectivity into the whole process. And then, of course, science has resulted in a lot of useful technology. So, because of all these reasons, science by and large has been tremendously successful, and today sort of science is replacing so many things, and there is an attempt of science replacing even morality, which typically has been the realm of philosophy, right? Philosophy typically has ethics, aesthetics, right? Ontology, epistemology, so a lot of those areas which are classically belonging to the philosophy are also now slowly starting to move towards science, and thanks to the great work done by people like Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris, and you must be knowing the great group of people, the scientific atheists, right? Who are doing a lot of contribution. They are bringing a lot of value into the human society, the human thinking, and because of which science has made a lot of progress even into humanities. That is the amazing thing. But is all that good? So we can see what are the limitations, or where do we stand now, right? So when it comes to search of truth, there are some problems which are there in the approach based purely on science, and this is sort of a controversial hot topic, and I'm sure there will be a lot of debates over this, but let us go through it, let us see. So science is basically based on reductionism and emergence. What it means is, suppose there is a complex system, the system can be broken down into its parts and its relationships between the parts, and by studying the parts and the relationships, we can to a large extent explain the complex system and its behavior and properties. And in between there is another important concept called emergence, which also has to be taken into account, because when two parts of a system come together, there is also something which comes out which is not existing already in the individual parts. So the classical example you can see is, let us say, life. Now just by putting some biochemicals together, life emerges. So the life is considered as an emergent phenomena out of the chemistry. So if you look at the whole sequence of as we have, so we have the subatomic particles, like you have quarks, leptons, bosons, fermions, and then they sort of come together using the different forces, strong forces, weak forces, and then there comes out the physics, the nuclear physics out of it, and then you have the protons and neutrons in the nucleus, and then you have electrons going around them, and then forget about the protons and neutrons and how the electrons react with each other, like with other elements, you get chemistry out of physics. So chemistry in a way emerges out of physics. And then you go still further, then you have all your amino acids, and then you have your proteins, which come together, and then from chemistry your biology comes out. And then you have the organism, and then you have the complexity as in animals, so you have behavior, so then finally you have a brain, and then brain's behavior, and finally like out of biology comes out your psychology. So this concept of something which is not there in the past emerging out of the combination is called the concept of emergence. So science has coined these words and then tried to explain to an extent. So this is one of the gray areas. So we can go to the next one. Next is objective reality. Now, how objective is reality? Now, reality is what we perceive. So one of the basic premise of science is something is read whether you see it or I see it. The reality of the world outside is objective. It is neutral. It is impersonal. That's one of the basic assumptions. And then verifiable concepts. Science is always limited to what is verifiable. So anything to be able to be analyzed under science, it has to be verifiable. So what you do is, suppose if you have a statement which you want to check if it is true or not, you frame it in a way, or you create an experiment, you design an experiment in a way that you say, okay, if the result is this, then it is fine. If the result is the otherwise, then it is wrong. So always you formulate any problem into a statement whose truth or false will validate the truth of the statement. So basically, science is always about being able to verify things. So in the philosophy of science, it is called the logical positivism, which is like has grown to an extent, and then now there are some variations of it, but fundamentally science always is limited to verifiable concepts. That's one of the fundamental premise of science. Then we have another very powerful concept in science called the Occam's razor. So the Occam's razor basically says that to explain a phenomena, always use the simplest concept. Now using a set of, let us say, 5 assumptions, if you can explain completely a particular phenomena, then don't bring in a 6th concept which is not needed. So keep things as simple as possible. So that is the Occam's razor. So based on which you try to explain the phenomena as you observe. Now, is this sufficient? Is it all fine? What are the limitations? We can see. Now, reductionism and emergence become pretty vague at higher levels. At lower levels of, as you said, when physics becomes chemistry or chemistry, it becomes okay. And then when chemistry becomes biology, things become still questionable. Is it really emergence? Is life all about just chemicals being put together? And then when you still go to a higher level, when it goes to psychology, are thoughts just merely, all reactions in the brain? Are they just some electrical reactions and chemical reactions happening in the brain? Is it acceptable? So that is a big question, right? Because the problem with reductionism is this: as per science, it takes materialism as the fundamental concept. So in the philosophy of science, it is called material monism. So the fundamental concept of science is based on what is called material monism, which in a layman's words means that the fundamental building blocks of this entire universe is nothing but matter and matter alone. When you say matter, it also includes energy and all kinds of quantum phenomena, everything. But whatever it is, it's basically physical phenomena. So that is the fundamental premise of science. So when you say emergence, then we say like everything can be explained in terms of from the fundamental laws of physics. Now when you come to that, if you see what are the corollaries, what are the inferences, now if you extend this concept of emergence completely, then every thought in your mind is basically a result of some chemical reactions, some electrical reactions happening in your brain. Every thought, no exceptions. Now, if that is accepted, then there is no place for free will. Free will is just an illusion. So, if you accept the pure materialistic foundation and reductionism and emergence, then free will is just not possible. There is no place for free will. What it means is that now all of us are sitting here, and that all of us sit here and listen to it, and the words which I tell, these are all just matter. Everything is a result of matter. And when did all this dynamic start? During Big Bang. So there is some amount of non-determinism which is brought in by various concepts like your Pauli's principle and Heisenberg's principle and all that. But roughly, to put it in a crude way, we can say that what I am talking now and that you are sitting here has been decided 13 billion years ago during Big Bang. So that's what it finally comes to. Because there is no free will, no place for free will, it's all physics, it's all dynamics, just physical dynamics, all equations. So that is what comes to if you analyze about reductionism and emergence. Now, we are not questioning is it true or not. That's not the question here. But are we ready to accept it or not? Right? Because the moment you remove free will out of the whole system, all your concepts of purpose of life, morality, ethics, right, responsibility, crime, punishment, judgment, everything is gone for a toss. Because your entire human society, human system lies on this one single point called free will. Because if free will is removed, then I am not responsible for what I do. If I am not responsible for what I do, then where is the purpose in life and where is the question of what is right, what is wrong, where is justice? Everything is gone. No purpose, right? So this is one thing which is something which is maybe we are not questioning whether it is what is right, what is wrong. We are not questioning whether there is free will or not. The question is like, are we okay to accept that there is no free will based on this premise? Okay. The next one, objective reality. Now our perception is colored by various factors, right? Now is reality really that objective? Because if you are all students of science, we all know like one student comes, he proposes a theory, gets his PhD and passes out. Then 2 years later another guy comes, he disproves that, gets his PhD, passes out. 2 years later another guy comes, he says no, the first one was right, he gets his PhD, passes out. That is how science keeps going, right? Now, finally, what is reality? Like, what is the truth? It keeps changing. And depending on my mood, today I might be in a happy mood and the world I see is different. And tomorrow if I am sad, then the same world appears to me totally different. A 5-year-old boy goes and looks at things and what he sees is different. And the same thing, a 15-year-old boy goes and sees and he sees everything different, right? So, for example, like if I get drunk, then what I see, the world I see is totally different. And there's a beautiful saying which says, the beauty of a girl is an optical illusion created by the hormones in the body, which is actually true. Because otherwise it's just a physical entity, the very concept of beauty of a woman is basically a coloring which is given into your brain by just the hormones which are there in your body, right? Same thing vice versa also. So that way, like what we see is so colored by our moods, the chemicals which are running in our body, whether it be hormones or alcohol, that objective reality, is it really objective? We have to question it. Okay. Then verifiable concepts. The world is not only limited to verifiable concepts. There are a lot of things in the world which are not verifiable. And simple example is free will. Is there free will or not? Can we verify or not? Sure, like there have been experiments by like you might have heard about Leibniz experiment, which has they have taken the brain mapping, when the different pulses, like the signals are fired in which part of the brain, how decisions are made. So there have been experiments, but still there is nothing conclusive about is there free will or not. If you say no, there is no free will, then we'll say okay, that you say there is no free will is also predetermined. If you say there is free will, then a person can always say okay, that you say there is free will is also predetermined. So you can neither conclude there is or there is not free will. And same thing about materialism. Now science has an assumption that the fundamental building block of this entire universe is material matter. Now that is an assumption. There is no way to prove it or disprove it. Because to prove it or disprove it, you have to get outside that system, and there is no way for us to get outside of the system. All said and done, we always think in our minds and we live in the physical world. So there is no way for us to prove or disprove whether matter is a fundamental entity, or for that matter is it anything else. Buddhism says mind is a fundamental entity, and Advaita Vedanta, as we will see, says consciousness is a fundamental entity. But there are different systems of philosophy which say different things as the fundamental entity, but there is no way to prove or disprove anything. So that is totally, it goes outside the scope of science. Then Occam's razor, there are so many cases which are not included or not analyzed sufficiently by science. Now, it's a very controversial topic. We can say astrology, we can say mind reading, clairvoyance, right? Like, there have been pretty strong instances of people being able to read another person's mind without even looking at the person. And there have been instances where people have been able to predict. So, but all those things are all, controversial. But one thing which within science, which is clearly there in front of our eyes, is the case of Srinivasa Ramanujam. Srinivasa Ramanujam rolled out theorems after theorems of mathematics, and if you ask him, how did you get all these theorems? How do you prove it? He says I don't know how to prove it. When I go to sleep every day, my DT, Namagiri Devi, she comes in my dream and she tells me the theorems, and I wake up and write down. That's the explanation he gives. It has been recorded in his biography. And all his notebooks are available today. The theorems are there, and all the theorems he has got, most of them, in his dream from the goddess. And today, still mathematicians are trying to prove those theorems, and slowly, one by one, the proofs of those theorems are emerging out. Now, how did he get all those theorems? Well, we have to ask the scientists, right? So, that way, now when you say Occam's razor says, if you can explain all observable phenomena within the existing axioms, don't bring in a new one. But then here is an observable phenomena which is not explainable by material science. So your Occam's razor has to be revised, which means that you have to include some other premise by which you can explain how Srinivasa Ramanujam was able to come up with those theorems. So this is just one instance, but there are so many instances. I don't want to get into them because again it's become a big debate. But this is something which is undebatable. So looking at all these things, we have to question, is science sufficient? Right? So what I've given you so far is what is science about, what are the limitations, where we are. So now let us go back to our questions, 6 questions based on our understanding of science. So how do we answer? Very funny. What is the nature of the sentient individual? We know about emergent phenomena. So the individual, that is me standing here, is an optical illusion. It's just an illusion, because free will is an illusion. Everything is emerging. So it's just all physics, just physical matter. So I as an individual is actually an illusion, right? What is the nature of the universal? So what do you mean by universal? Everything put together is just the cosmos, because there's nothing else other than matter. So the question number 2 and 3 actually become the same thing. What is the nature of the insentient world? Yes, Big Bang, universe, whatever we see, right? Why is there human suffering? Well, where is the human being to suffer, right? It's all matter, right? It's all just matter. So what is suffering? So from the foundation of physics, from the foundation of science, the very question of free will is questioned. So where is the question of suffering? State beyond suffering, when suffering is not there, where is the state beyond suffering? What is the mean? Again, that question also gets rolled out. So we cannot effectively answer the last three questions based purely on science, because the one important entity called free will is removed, because all the other questions depend on that. Fine? Now, is it useful to society? Can we accept such a phenomenon, such a concept? Now, that is up to each of us. Individually, we have to question ourselves. Fine. So, now let us go to the next topic, or next paradigm, to put it in the name of Kuhn. Kuhn is basically there's a lot of work which has been done in philosophy of science where, so there's a concept of paradigm shifts which keep happening. So basically what we see as science, religion and philosophy, you can put it in Kuhn's words as three paradigms. So going to religion, now when I say religion here, there are some concepts which are common to all religions and some concepts which might be only specific to Vedanta, which we will see. But the beauty is, the Indian religious thinkers, the Vedantists, have thought about these concepts so deeply and they have arrived at very good generalizations, which is very useful for us. So there are four pursuits of man. So you all might have heard about Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. So Artha is basically security, right? I want to survive. So that is the concept of Artha. Then Kama is pleasure. Beyond my survival, what do I need? Right? I want to enjoy life, so that becomes Kama. Now, these two, Artha and Kama, are there for both animals and human beings. All sentient beings have this concept of Artha and Kama. Now, the next two, Dharma and Moksha, these are Purusharthas, or these are goals only for human beings. Now, what is Dharma? Dharma is defined as voluntary restrictions and regulations put towards the pursuit of Artha and Kama, so that the pursuit becomes sustainable and equitable. So that is the definition for Dharma. So I'll repeat. Dharma is the voluntary restrictions and regulations put towards an individual's pursuit of Artha and Kama, so that the pursuit becomes sustainable and equitable. So to give an example, suppose today a friend comes to my house and gives me a box of 20 laddus, and I like laddu a lot. Now, if I say, okay, fine, I like laddu, let me eat all of them today only. I eat all the laddus, I gobble up, and tomorrow I am in bed. Diarrhea. So, my pursuit of Artha has jeopardized my pursuit of or my pursuit of Kama has risked my pursuit of Artha, which means I have indulged so much in my enjoyment that my security itself has become questionable. So, it is adharmic. If I say, okay, let me eat 2 laddus today, tomorrow 2, day after tomorrow 2, then that becomes Dharma, because it becomes sustainable. So my pursuit of Artha and Kama has to be sustainable. So that is what Dharma brings in. Right? We put some restrictions and regulations. The other thing is equitable. Now, if I eat, I can share the laddus so that others also get it. So tomorrow if someone else gets some laddus, they will share with me also. And so that way, Dharma also talks about equitable sharing among everyone. So basically, like, everyone pursues their own Artha and Kama, and one person's pursuit of Artha and Kama should not unjustifiably infringe upon another person's pursuit of Artha and Kama. So that is all is Dharma about. Now, basically Dharma is about the basic qualities, because we expect others to be truthful to us, we expect others to be non-violent to us. So we expect the same thing from we also should be following the same thing. So now, the height of Dharma is what is put there. So how can a person be truthful, non-violent, self-controlled, etc., even unto death? So how can we inspire a person to Dharma to that extent that he is truthful even unto death. We have a lot of classical examples, Harishchandra or Mahatma Gandhi, like, who have been trying to be really truthful. Yudhishthira, right? They don't even worry about their own death. They say like, it's okay, even if I die, I will be truthful. So now that is the epitome, that is the final word in Dharma, and that is what we want to push each individual to. Now, how can we inspire a person to be dharmic in that way? And the last Purushartha is moksha. Moksha is freedom. And freedom from what? Typically, if you ask lot of people, they say freedom from birth. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, freedom from that. But that is a sort of an escapist attitude of moksha. The real definition of moksha is freedom from sorrow. Gita gives the Gita's opening chapter of the Gita teaching says asocyan anvasochyatvam prajnavadamscha bhasate gatasun agatasuncha na anushochyanti panditaha. So that word na anushochyanti panditaha is the definition of moksha. A pandita, that is a person who is free, a wise person, na anushochyanti, he doesn't have sorrow. So the definition of moksha is freedom from sorrow. Now life has problems, life has ups and downs, but in spite of ups and downs in life, how can we be inspired to be cheerful and up and going, right? Without getting depressed, without trying to commit suicide, right? Without getting dejected. How can we be up and going in spite of all the ups and downs of life? Now, when a person is totally independent of what happens in his life, where he has his emotions fully under his control, his motivation fully under his control, that is called freedom, and that is the moksha. So, when you say moksha, inspired by what will a person be cheerful and active in spite of the ups and downs of life? So now these two questions, these two pursuits, dharma and moksha, that is what comes under religion. Any religion, whatever, doesn't matter. Every religion just tries to address only these two questions. Now, depending on the maturity of the people, it might give different answers. Now, if the people whom it addresses are so low that they only understand kao piyo maja karo, then the religion will say, okay, fine, if you follow these two, then you will get some paradise, right, some swarga and all that. So, or some religion might say, okay, fine, if you follow this, dharma and moksha, if you follow dharma, then you will have a place reserved for you in some heaven or some Vaikuntha or Kailasha or wherever. So somehow, depending on the understanding of the people, the religion wants to motivate people to only these two. So this is the purpose of religion. Just these 2 points. Dharma and moksha, how to keep a person moral and how to keep a person happy and inspired. Different religions follow different ways, and even within Hinduism, there are all possibilities are there. Enjoyable heaven is there, company with the Lord is there. There also you have like Sarupya Mukti, Salokya Mukti. There are different versions, all kinds of variations are there. The beauty of Vedanta is that it tries to give a logical answer to these two, with minimum amount of faith, right? With minimum, if I say like, I don't want to believe too many things, apply Occam's razor, and I say, I want to apply Occam's razor, tell me the minimum belief I should have, which will cater to these two questions, which answers these two questions, and that is what Vedanta is about, and that is what I am going to take it up as a part of religion, right? So, what is the method of religion? So now, as I told you, like, it basically wants to inspire people in these two things. Now, Vedanta divides people into two types. One is the immature people. That is, how do you find who is immature? They are selfish. In any situation, they ask, what is in it for me? And surprisingly, that's what the MBA teaches you anyway. So, immature, selfish people ask in any situation, tell me what is in it for me. Now that is the one kind of people whom religion has to address to. And the other kind is slightly better people who are altruistic, who are mature, and who have the maturity to look themselves in someone else's shoes. So they say, okay, if it is good for me, then it should be good for someone else. So that's where, there's the golden rule, right? Do unto others what you want others to do unto you. Gita says like, Atmopam yena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadiva dukkam sayogi paramamataha. So sarvatra, everywhere you look at the sukha and dukkha of another person to decide for yourself what is right and what is wrong. So whatever you think is sukha for you, you do to others, and that is what is right. And if you think something is dukkha for you, if you do to others, that is wrong. So that is exactly the golden rule which is there in the Gita, 6th chapter. So anyway, so a person who lives by that, so he is a more mature person, an altruistic person. Now both these type of people should be inspired to follow dharma and moksha. So that is the problem which is posed towards religion, and all religions basically address these two problems only: how to be good and how to be happy, right? So let us see how Vedanta addresses it. So Vedanta has basically, if you take religious Vedanta, the religion part of Vedanta, there are only two assumptions in the entire Vedanta. It's very surprising, like like when I analyze the whole concept of Vedanta, the religion of Vedanta, and try to reduce it to say, okay, this is, so many concepts are usually presented. They say rebirth, and they say heaven, there is a hell, there is this, that, devatas, this, that, everything. But if we start analyzing them and start mapping them and try to apply this Occam's razor and try to trace out every concept to say, okay, can this concept be a corollary of some other concept, instead of speaking an independent assumption? So if we start reducing it, finally you land up with just two assumptions on which the entire Vedanta is based on. And just from these two assumptions, it is possible to logically derive every concept which is explained in the Bhagavad Gita or any scripture, any Hindu scripture. Based on Vedanta, if you present it, there are only two assumptions, two significant assumptions, and only two, nothing else. So let us look at that. So the first assumption, as I told you, is free will. Now, free will is the foundation of any religion. Any religion is based on free will. Without free will, there is no religion. Take any religion, whether it is a primitive tribal religion or a sophisticated Vedanta, free will is the kingpin of it. Around free will only the entire religion goes around. And free will and moral causality are just two sides of the same coin. So when I say what is free will is, suppose let us say I have my hand and I just close my hand like this. The question is, did I have the freedom to do that or not? Now, obviously my freedom is limited. Like if I want to jump from a 20-story building and fly like a bird, I cannot. Now, but on what I can do within my capacity, do I have the freedom to do that or not? So that is what is called free will. Now, this free will is an assumption, the fundamental assumption of every religion. So assuming free will, now let us say I have free will. Now on what basis will I apply my free will? I need to apply my free will only against a constant law which is there, because otherwise my free will be useless. I'll give you an example. For example, let us say like I'm hungry and I eat. Now my act of or my decision to eat because I'm hungry is based on the assumption that if I eat, my hunger will go. Now the cause and effect relationship that if I eat, my hunger will go is a standard fixed objective law based on which I can decide to eat when I feel hungry. Suppose the law is not there is no fixed law. If I eat today, my hunger goes, and yesterday when I ate, my hunger did not go, and day before yesterday when I ate, my friend's hunger went. Now, with such a random behavior of the system, I cannot decide to eat if I get hungry. I'll be hungry, I won't know what to do, because there is no constant law for me to act against. And so, if there is no constant law, my free will becomes entirely useless. So if I have to be able to exercise my free will, there has to be a constant law there. It's called moral causality. The Bible says, like, as you sow, so shall you reap. Right? Which is basically called as the law of karma in the Dharmic traditions. So free will and law of karma are just two sides of the same coin. Without free will, there is no law of karma, and without law of karma, there cannot be free will. It is useless. So this is the thanks. So free will and law of karma are basically two names or two sides of the same coin. One is from the individual point of view, other one is from the system's point of view. Now this is one of the fundamental points of any religion. So now this free will defines me. In the paradigm of religion, when I say who am I? So the simple answer is you are the wielder of free will. The person who uses the free will is you. The body, the mind, the sense organs, the intellect, my memory, all these things are various instruments which are available to me, and finally the decision maker is who I am. Right? So if I have a situation in life, then my memory will tell you, last time when this came, this is what you did, or this is what this person did. And then my emotion will say, yeah, you did that and you got nice beatings and you cried. My intellect will say, yes, so that is not the right thing to do. So all these kinds of different instruments are available to me, right? Manas, Chitta, Ahankara. So all these things are available to me. And finally, like, I am the decision maker. When all my memory, my intellect, my emotions, everything tells me that this is the right thing to do, still I can decide to do something else. Because I am the decision maker. So this is the free will, right? And then I am the holder of the free will. So that is technically it is called Jiva. And as I told you, strict moral causality. We call it moral causality because it is basically in the moral field. Just like physics talks about causality in the physical field, this is the causality at the moral level. Right? And what is my intention? Based on my intention, I get the results. And we assume that there is fairness and justice in the whole system. So this is nothing but the law of conservation, whatever in physics is talked about. Physics talks about law of conservation. Same thing applies to the morality. We assume that the system is fair and just. Otherwise, we cannot apply our free will. And nothing is lost, even by death. Whatever I do, I have to face, because I am the person who has decided. I have made a decision. So, as per the law of causality, I have to face the consequences. Now, just popping off, dying is not an excuse. It is not an escape. So, even by death, I cannot escape the moral causality, because we have defined it that way, right? Because the body, the mind, the intellect, senses, all these things are instruments, and I am the person who is actually making the decision. So, when there is a law of causality and conservation laws in the entire physics, the entire world runs by law of conservation, it is natural and logical and expectable that even when you define the entity as the decision maker, then causality has to be applied to this entity also. Because as we're in physics, right? Like a circle can be drawn in any system, and across the boundaries, conservation laws apply. Same thing here. So I draw the circle around me as the Jiva, and the same law of conservation should apply. And just that here it is not a charge or a magnetism or charge. Here it is the moral decision making. And this is what leads to, from this you can derive all your concepts of rebirth and past birth, and everything is basically corollaries based on just this one concept called free will. If you say, yes, I accept free will, then all these corollaries just follow one after the other in a logical way. Now, coming to the next assumption, conscious totality is another assumption in Vedanta. So, this whole universe, everything put together, whatever exists, put everything together into one entity, and that entity which is total is conscious. This is a very, very important assumption. Again, so we can understand it from an example. So now if I take my own body, it contains so many cells in my body, and every cell is actually a living being in its own right. If you take red blood corpuscle in my body, it gets birth in the bone marrow, and then it lives for 120 days, and then it dies in the liver. So it has its own cycle, a life. So like that, every cell in my body actually is a living being in its own right. And of course, some of the cells in my body are my own, they carry my DNA, and there are billions of cells in my body which are bacteria, virus, like they have other parasites, other hosts both beneficent and maleficent, which all put together actually forms my body. But then if I say, okay, every cell in my body is a living being of its own, then the question comes, then who am I? Like, I also claim myself to be a living being, right? The scriptures actually give a very interesting, they give a very interesting passage. It says, like, does your body belong to you? That's the question. And it gives various options. It says, no, because in your body there are so many living beings which claimed it to be theirs, and then your family members claim that your body is theirs, right? Your son might say, like, your son might get on your shoulder and sit and say, like, go, walk, crawl, I want to go, like an elephant, and you have no choice. This body belongs to him, right? And then it goes to the lot of gruesome details also. It says, okay, your employer owns your body and mind, true. And finally it says, the jackals, the worms in the ground, they also own your body, because your body is food to the tigers and jackals. So they also have a claim over your body. So now your body doesn't belong to you in reality. So putting this way, like, so now coming to the point, my entire body is actually is a group of so many living organisms, and each of them is a living organism in its own right. Then who am I? So I, as an independent living being, is actually a concept. Now if you extend the same thing, we say, like, India decided not to sign the NPT, right? Or India decided to vote against the Kyoto Protocol. So when you say that, we consider India as a whole as one single entity. As it has its own mental dynamics, it has its own physical entity, which is the land, right? So the entire thought process of the whole country is treated as one single unit. Then we say, like, the earth is suffering because of pollution. So this is the way, like, like, there is one inside the other, like the whole system. Now if we put the whole totality of existence together as one being, what do we call it as? So that is what is called as Ishvara, right? Now the question comes, so the question is, like, that's what we say, God is not a matter of belief, it is just a matter of understanding, right? Ishvara is just a matter of understanding. So now coming to it, the question comes, okay, fine, we accept that the totality is one single entity. Why should it be conscious? Is it a conscious entity or not? So finally, like, the question of Ishvara comes to not whether Ishvara exists or not, but is there a consciousness associated with the totality or not? I know that there is a consciousness associated with me because I am conscious of myself. So in spite of my body being a conglomeration of so many living beings, I have a consciousness as an independent entity. Now, does the totality have a consciousness of its own? This is a question where, again, it's neither provable nor disprovable. That is why we say it's an assumption. Vedanta takes the assumption that it is a conscious entity, whereas there are other philosophies like Buddhism which say, no, it is not a conscious entity. Now, Vedanta gives some reasons why it has to be so. Now, okay, we'll look at some concepts. So, now Ishvara is transcendent and immanent. So, in Tamil, the name for Ishvara is Kadavul. Kada means transcendent, Ul means immanent. So, basically, the Ishvara concept is basically transcendent and immanent. Just like the relationship between you and your body, right? If I touch my finger, I say, yes, I have touched me. Now, for you to touch me, you don't need to touch every part of my body. Even if you touch the tip of my finger, I say, yes, you have touched me. So which means I am immanent in every part of my body, and I am transcendent also. How? By accident, if I lose my hand, still I am the same person. So my hand doesn't define me. So though I am immanent in every part of my body, still I am transcendent than of the parts of my body. So that is what is meant by transcendent and immanent. And there's another beautiful statement, Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. So Karana means cause. Cause, actually, there are multiple ways of causality. As per the Vedanta, it can be Nimitta Karana, Upadana Karana, Upayoga Karana, different kinds of causality. So if you take a pot, the clay is the Upadana Karana of a pot. It's called as the material cause. And the potter is the Nimitta Karana of the pot. So that is it's called the intelligent cause in English. Now you use a pot to store some milk or something. So now milk becomes the Upayoga Karana of the pot. So all three are actually causes of the pot. For the pot's existence, you need so many causes. So now Ishvara is the all causes put together. So Ishvara is the Nimitta Karana of this world also, and he is the Upayoga Karana also, and Ishvara is the Upadana Karana also. So that is the concept, and here the scriptures give an example, like you say, like how can, because in normal sense, now this table, this desk is there, it is made of wood, and a carpenter made it. Now carpenter and wood are different, but there are examples where the Upadana Karana and Nimitta Karana are the same. Like the example given is a spider, Urnanabi. A spider's web, spider does not take material from anywhere else to spin its web. It is the one which makes the web, and it is the one which creates the web also, and the web's material also comes out of it. Then there is examples of like the hair which grows out of the body, grass growing out of the earth. So the scriptures give various examples of situations where the Upadana Karana and Nimitta Karana are the same. So now that is about the Ishvara. And context sensitive interface. This is a very interesting concept in Hinduism. Now because Ishvara is the whole, now every time I consider myself as an individual and I interact with Ishvara. Fine. And depending on the context of my interaction, Ishvara appears to me as that particular entity. So for example, if I go to take bath in river Ganga, now I am the person, I am the individual who is going to take bath. Then I say, hey Ganga Mate. So Ishvara has become the Ganga Mata in the context of me going to take bath in Ganga. If I am starting some work, then I worship Ganesha, Vigna Vinayaka. So the same Ishvara in the context of me starting some work becomes Vinayaka there. If I am starting to study something, then the same Ishvara becomes Saraswati in that context. If I am going to start some enterprise, the same Ishvara becomes Lakshmi. Right? If I consider myself as an Indian citizen, then I say Bharat Mata. Same Ishvara. Depending on the context, for every role of an individuality that I take, the corresponding totality becomes the way I interact with Ishvara. Ishvara is a totality, absolutely, and depending on the context that I choose to be an individual, that particular context, the totality becomes Ishvara in that particular context. So if I say I am a living being on earth, then Ishvara becomes the Bhumi Mata. Right? So this is the way every Devata, like all the worship which we do, everything is basically based on this concept of context sensitive interface that Ishvara gives to us to interact. Okay? And so when I say I am a doer, then Ishvara becomes the Karma Phaladata. So he becomes the bestower of the results of my action. When I consider myself as a doer of action. So this way every context there is between me and Ishvara, it becomes a relationship. Now the last point which I highlighted at the time, why should Ishvara be conscious? Why should the totality be conscious? Now that is needed for sustenance. Suppose let us say there is a house and no one lives in that house and no one even bothered to do anything with that house. Today the house is there. If you go and see the house after 10 years, all the glasses will be broken, doors will be rotten, right? There will be all moss and plants grown all over. There will be a deterioration. So that is what in physics you call the second law of thermodynamics. Any system in the world deteriorates. Left to itself, any system deteriorates. Now that when applied to the entire world, now without a conscious entity, the system will deteriorate. So now you have to distinguish it from the classical, like the Victorian and pre-Victorian concepts. Like say for example, we say like okay, the watchmaker, like if there is a watch, then there should be a watchmaker. Like now Vedanta itself refutes all those arguments. It refutes all, clears up and says that unless you have seen the components of the watch before the watch was made, how can you assume there was a watchmaker? So there are various arguments by which so many concepts which are normally taken as the reason for God, they are all cleared out. Finally, it comes to this point to say what is life? When I say, okay, I am a living being, life means every moment I fight against the environment which tries to destroy me. Every moment, everything in the environment is trying to destroy me, dismantle me, disassemble me, and basically free me from this combination. So left to itself, that's why a dead body just starts decaying and deteriorating. Because the tendency of anything in this world is to get dismantled and get destroyed. And it needs a life. A life is one that puts things together and holds things together. Now, if you take anything, for example, if you take this desk, the desk doesn't assemble by itself. Why? Because the assembled state of a desk is a state of lower entropy than the disassembled state. So, left to itself, the entropy of the system will keep increasing, and to bring it back, to keep the system, keep any system together, there should be a conscious entity. Now, if you see in the thermodynamics law, otherwise you have to keep pumping lot of energy into it. You must have seen recently there was Jeremy England, like he had proved, come up with the concept of how life can evolve out of concepts. But basically what he says there also is that if given an infinite heat source and given an infinite heat sink, then things can happen. Now, infinite heat source and infinite heat sink can be considered in a situation where, let us say in the earth, where sun is there and sun is burning off all its hydrogen and helium atoms to generate heat, because of which life on earth is sustained. Now, life on earth is sustained at the cost of sun actually dying, right? So much of energy from sun is being transferred into the earth, by which life on earth is being sustained. So that is why you are able to, the entropy of the earth is actually being maintained in the form of life, because beings are there at the cost of the sun being dying every moment. Now, if you take the entire universe, now the question is, can the entropy of the entire universe be going up or down? Now, assuming that the energy, the totality of total energy available in the entire universe is constant, the entropy of the entire universe has to go up only. The universe has to disintegrate. So now, if a universe has to evolve into a complex system as we see now it is not possible as per the law of physics, because the amount of energy available is constant. Now, that is where this comes into picture. If there is a conscious entity there, then the entropy can be maintained. The entropy can be kept low by a conscious entity. Because if we see what we have, life is nothing but a low entropy. Life, whatever we call as life, is nothing but a mechanism by which entropy of a system and its surrounding systems is kept pulled down. That's why a carpenter, when he makes a chair, is actually, the chair is there, the entropy of that chair system is being brought down by the carpenter by his intelligent action. So what we call as intelligence, or what we call as sentience, is nothing but a sink of entropy. Now, when you consider that for the entire universe, right, the system can be sustained only by a conscious total entity, which is Ishvara. And Krishna tells in the Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanit bhavati bharata abhyutthanama dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. So it is left to itself, morality in this entire universe will keep going down, which means entropy will keep increasing. That is why the Lord has to come, right? Paritranaya sadhunam chadushkritam. He says, Sambhavami yuge yuge. The Lord has to come in to pull the entropy down, otherwise the system will keep deteriorating. So this statement of the Gita, the Avatara concept, is nothing but your second law of thermodynamics, applied to the moral level. So that is why Ishvara has to be a conscious entity. It's just a matter of your application of second law of thermodynamics to the entire universe as a system. Okay. So now, these are the only two assumptions. So, Ishvara is omniscient and omnipotent. Again, two very controversial, misunderstood concepts. When we say omniscient, does not mean he knows all the features. He only means that he is an antaryami, because he is all pervasive. He knows the innermost thoughts of everyone. So that is what is meant by omniscient. And when you say omnipotent, it doesn't mean, okay, the classical statement, like if God is omnipotent, can he create a stone that he cannot lift? If God is omnipotent, can he create a stone that he cannot lift? So the thing is, basically these are all play of words. Now either you define God or you define omnipotent. Now suppose if a person comes and asks you the question, right? If God is omnipotent, can he lift a stone? Can he create a stone that he cannot lift? Then you ask him, what do you mean by God? Now he has to answer. If he says any answer, you can ask him, do you define God as a person who can create a stone that he cannot lift? Because it's basically a part of the definition of God. You are assuming a definition of God and then you are posing a question. So basically there's a contradiction in the question itself. Otherwise you can say, what do you mean by omnipotent? You say omnipotent means anything can be done. Then you can put the question back to him itself. Does your meaning of omnipotence mean creating a stone that he cannot lift? Now he has to say yes or no. Either way he is caught. So basically these are all play of words and these have no meaning. So when we say omnipotent, first we have to define what is omnipotent. Otherwise there is no meaning to using the word at all. So here when we say omnipotent, it only means that God can create and destroy the world at his will. Now this omnipotence of God does not contradict with the free will of the Jiva. Jiva's free will cannot contradict with omnipotence of the Lord. Omnipotence of the Lord is limited to the free will of the Jiva. Now the free will of the Jiva and omnipotence of the Lord go hand in hand, just as we said that moral causality. Simple example I will give you. So now suppose if I have one jar of hydrogen, another jar of oxygen, and I mix them together and it bursts into flame and I get some water settled at the sides. So now what are the causes? Did I create the water? No. So without the chemical law that hydrogen and water, oxygen together will form water, I cannot create the water. Now that doesn't mean that without my interference, this water could have formed. So the standard law that hydrogen and oxygen become water is what is God's omnipotence, and my free will is going and mixing them together. So in every action in this world, there is always a hand of myself and the system. So that is what I told you about free will and the causality. So always they work in tandem, they are complementary to each other. Fine. So prayer and austerities are also actions. When we say law of causation, now then you say, okay, how does prayer work? Then we say prayer is also an action. Austerities is also an action. So these are all equally actions, just as anything else. And so your law of causality, morality, everything applies to this also. Karma is reflective. This is a very important thing. Wishing harm will bring harm. So basically, suppose let us say a dog is running on the road, and if I take a stone and throw it at the dog, so elders will tell you, no, don't do it, because then the karma which you create out of that, someone will throw a stone at you. Now I might say like, no, my desire was that the dog should get hurt. Now where am I creating a karma by which I will get hurt? So that is why what is meant by law of karma is reflective. The whole thing is one system. So what I wish for others comes to me. So that is what is the golden rule, right? Do unto others what you wish for yourself. So law of karma is reflective, and this is very important. That is the reason why finite desires keep the cycle going. Now, this whole concept of what we call as karma and janma. Now, I have karma because of this karma. When I say like it is a unfructified result of action. That is what is called by karma. Karma, basically the word means both action and the result of action. And that result of action, because I have to face the consequence according to the law. Now the consequence can be faced by me only by having another janma, getting another body, because that is needed for me to face the consequences. Now when I have a body, I again do karma. Now that again leads to janma. So basically karma, janma, this cycle, right? Now how to get out of the cycle? That is the whole thing. So we say finite desires keep it going. Why? Suppose if I say like, I desire for something. Now you have the law of supply and demand. Anything that I desire is finite. Suppose let us say I want a big flat in the center of Bangalore. MG Road, I want a big flat. Now me getting something finite is always at the cost of someone else not getting that thing. Me getting something finite is always at the cost of someone else not getting that finite thing. So even if by dharma, if I desire for something good but finite, and if I get it, I am already denying someone else of getting the same thing. So law of karma is reflective. So which means even by dharmic method, if I am getting something finite in this world, karma is reflective. So that I will always be the other. There are 1,000 other people who are jealous of me, who are desiring the same thing, are not able to get it. So karma is reflective, and so I am still caught in the cycle. So the only way to get out of it is remove, don't desire for anything finite. As long as my desires are about finite things, I am still caught in the cycle because of the reflective nature of karma. So the only way of getting out of it is go for something which is infinite demand and infinite supply and mostly no demand at all, which is basically God. Right? Me attaining something is not going to deprive someone else from attaining the same thing. That is what is called as infinite supply. Right? Infinite supply is when just me attaining that is not going to harm someone else's probability of attaining the same thing. So unless your desires are limited only to those things which have got a finite supply, you will be caught in the cycle. So that is what many of the theistic religions aim for, whether it is your Christianity or Vaishnavism so all of them basically what they say is forget about the world, aim for God. Why? Because God is infinite supply, right, and almost nil demand actually, right? Everyone is infinite. Even if everyone go to him, still there is more supply, but no one wants to go there. So infinite supply and almost zero demand. So if you restrict your desires to only such things, then you are not depriving anyone else of that, and so because of the reflective nature of karma, you don't get caught in the cycle. So this is the concept behind this attaining to Vaikuntha, aiming for Vaikuntha, and all those concepts. Like so, the Christians they say, okay, we will go to Jesus, like pray Jesus, surrender to Him, you attain Him. Now those things don't create a karma, doesn't tie you up with the cycle because of the infinite supply. Okay. So finally, like what religious concept, the religious model says is like the aim is just to get out of the race, because as long as you are in the race, you keep going through ups and downs, joys and sorrows, hopes and disappointments. So get out of the race, and the way is to switch your desires from finite things to the infinite thing. So now let us go to the next finale, like for religion. So the 6 questions. So who am I? I am the holder of free will. That is the definition for me. What is the nature of the universal, the whole? We said is a conscious totality, right? And what is the nature of the sentient world? The sentient world is this world, whatever we see, right? When we say totality, it obviously includes this world also. So the world is nothing but God. Ishvara, the world is just another form of Ishvara. Ishvara himself appears as this world also. The same Vishnu Sahasranama, the first mantra says Vishwam, right? The first mantra, first name of Vishnu in Vishnu Sahasranama is Vishwam. Vishwam means world. So basically there is no difference between Ishvara and the world. Now why is there human suffering? Whatever suffering which we have is our own asking. We do good things, we get good things. We do bad things, we get bad things. So why is there suffering? Because you deserve it, right? So how to get out of the suffering? Temporarily, you do good things, you will get good things. And what is the state beyond suffering? Basically, like you go for something which has got infinite supply. So basically, you will never be deprived of it. So which is the absolute happiness you get, which in different religions it says like you going to Vaikuntha, Kailasha or paradise or heaven or whatever, they define. And what is the state beyond suffering? Basically like I don't have any finite desire, so it means I am out of the race. Right? So getting out of the rat race is the way to attain infinite and absolute happiness as per the religious paradigm. Fine. So now let us go to the next slide. So we'll see how the purpose is served. Dharma, morality. So what can inspire a person to be perfectly honest? Law of karma is enough. It just says, so for a selfish person, what you do, if you do good, you get good. So it is for your own selfish purpose that you do good. Right? And what is the other one? Like, so you have moksha, resilience. What will make a person cheerful and active in spite of ups and downs of life? Yes, like there is a way out of it, so you go for it. So it is worth living. Right? So life, so both the questions are answered in this way, even for a person who is selfish. For a person who is altruistic, it's pretty easy. You just say, okay, like he suffers, then you also will suffer. If he suffers, you are unhappy, so better you be good. So this way, like the whole thing goes. And coming to resilience, like because by other way, there is no answer to the question of what is wrong in committing suicide. Like it's a very basic question. Suppose all cultures, everywhere, we accept that committing suicide is wrong. If you ask the question why, give me a logical reason why committing suicide is wrong. Suppose it is a selfish person. Now if you say like, no, see, if you commit suicide, all your friends will be unhappy. You say, no, I know them, they'll be only happy. But still, we say like, no, committing suicide is bad. For a person who is very selfish, if he says, tell me one reason why I should not commit suicide. Painlessly, instantly, suppose if I can commit suicide, what is wrong? There is no reason to it. Now, an altruistic person will say, see, now you are 20 years old or 25 years old, you have eaten so much, you have taken so much of services from the society, you have to give back. Now, that might be you can't consume and then like finally just leave the place without returning back. Now, that might be an answer which might be agreeable to an altruistic person. But for a selfish person, he'll say like, so what? I leave. I don't care. No, there is no answer to it. So, when you say that is basically inspired by what? In spite of ups and downs of life, a person will be motivated enough to continue in life, to keep pushing. You need a different answer. And that answer can come only from religion, especially for a person who is selfish. Okay? Because common man is selfish. You have to accept that. The common man is selfish, and whatever model which you give for life to him, you have to take that assumption that he is a selfish person. How can I make a selfish person be moral and be motivated? This is the very, very tough question, which so far has been answered effectively only by religion. It may give a lot of cock and bull stories, like there is one Ramba, there is a Urvashi, you go to Swarga, you can enjoy this, that. It's okay. But for a common man, he is motivated. To be honest, he is motivated to be happy, he is motivated to do something good in this world. Now the purpose is served, which nothing else can replace it. Anyway, so we'll go to the next. So now we saw so many glories of religion, all goody things. So we'll look at this. What are the problems? And what is given here is only a sample. And what I have given here is straight picked out from Mandukya Karika. Mandukya Karika is a fantastic text, 7th century text written by Gaudapadacharya, Shankaracharya's guru's guru. And he takes up Mandukya Upanishad and he writes a commentary on that. And as a part of the commentary, he takes every system of philosophy and rips them apart left, right and center. Whether it is Buddhism, Jainism, different types of Buddhism, your theistic philosophies, non-atheistic philosophies, he takes every philosophy one by one and rips them apart. Logically, he just hammers them and then shatters them into pieces. And what I have given here, because I have presented to you only the theistic Vedanta, that is a religion, Vedantic religion. I am giving you only a sample of his breaking down of the concepts of religion. This is only a sample. He gives so many reasons apart from this. I just taken up a few of them. So it's a fantastic text. And if anyone who comes and argues about any religion or atheism or whatever it is, if you want to get arsenal for you, some ammunition for you to debate, go and read Mandukya Karika, you will get more than enough. Okay, it's a time-tested text. People have written commentaries and commentaries and commentaries over it, commentaries, sub-commentaries, sub-commentaries. So, I'll just give a sample here. So now, we talked about law of cause and effect, Janma Karma. Simple question he asked, where did it all begin? A very simple question, even by common sense we will ask. Anyone who talks about law of causation, ask, okay, where did this all begin? Law of karma, you have so much of karma. Okay, but where did the first karma come from? So now, anyone can ask this question. But in Mandukya Karika, he says, okay, let me analyze it. Let me come up with various possible answers. He comes up with about 12 possible answers he comes up with. I am giving here only a few of them. So now, one possibility is you can say like, none of them can be the beginning. Suppose if you say like Janma and Karma, you can go on step back. We'll go one by one. Back. Right? So, Karma and Janma. Suppose if you say, no, Karma and Janma, they don't have a beginning. It is an infinite cycle. Then it is, how can it be? Have you seen anything in this world which has no beginning? That's the first question. The very concept of Karma, anything you have, it should have a beginning. Now you say Karma is because of Janma is because of Karma. Tell me which comes first. Now, you can never answer it. Because if you say Karma came first, then you say, okay, where did this Karma come from? Without any Janma. If you say, no, Janma came first, then we'll say, okay, Janma is because of Karma, so how did the Janma come? So, this is a question which cannot be answered here. Now, suppose then one intelligent person comes and says, no, this is an infinite chain of Janma and Karma. Then Gaudapada says, okay, fine. Have you now he says, Janma and Karma, okay, I can assume, I can understand they are real entities. But this concept of chain of Janma and Karma, that chain exists only in your mind. Because externally what you see is only entities. And it is your own mind which puts in the relationships together and puts them together. So when you say chain of Janma and Karma, the chain cannot exist without Janma and Karma. Fine. So you are saying that it is an infinite chain, doesn't hold water, because there is no chain without its individual links. So you can't say the individual links are without beginning, but the chain is without beginning, you cannot say. Okay, slightly complicated, but anyway, basically it says, you have already declared that neither Karma nor Janma is the beginning. Now, any chain consists of only Janma and Karma. How can you say that Janma and Karma don't have a beginning, right? But the chain also doesn't have a beginning. Even if it is a chain, there should be a beginning for the chain, which has to be either Janma or Karma. So it is like, your concept is not right. So like this, he gives various points are brought up and then he logically refutes each of them. So next, this is another interesting one. So he says, okay, assuming, okay, you are saying it doesn't have a beginning, okay, fine. Assuming it doesn't have a beginning. Does it have an end? This is the question. Now, if you say like, no, it doesn't have an end, then you say, then you define moksha as end of Janma Karma cycle. If you say there is no end, then then your concept of moksha is not there. Then what is the purpose of the whole thing? Right? So you can't say it doesn't have an end. Now, next one. So now if you say, okay, fine, I assume, okay, it is an end. Then the end of Janma Karma, you say is moksha, which is the beginning of freedom. Now if freedom, moksha has a beginning, then anything which has a beginning has to have an end. Anything which has a beginning should have an end. So if you say the end of Janma and Karma chain is the beginning of moksha, then moksha has a beginning, which means moksha will have an end, which means that moksha is worthless, is useless. A freedom that has an end is useless. I'm not interested in that freedom. I want absolute freedom. Because moksha definition is absolute freedom. So if you define moksha has a beginning at a point of time, then whatever caused its beginning can be removed and it will end. So again it is refuted. So like this, these are only some arguments. So like this, there are so many arguments which are brought in and then discussed and refuted. Okay, so now we'll go to another topic. Now, question raised, can Ishvara be the cause of the world? Now we always say Ishvara is the cause of the world, God created this world, so many concepts which we are discussing. So now it raises a simple question, can Ishvara be the cause of the world? And it says, okay, what are the problems there? Now, being a cause means subject to change. No one can cause something without changing him, without himself being changed. Right? I cannot create an action without myself actually being subject to some change. Now, being subject to change means I should have an intention to change, being a conscious entity. And having intention means I have a desire. And having desire means I am limited. Because if I am unlimited, I am dissatisfied. If I am not dissatisfied, then I cannot have a desire. No desire means no intention. No intention means no change. So I cannot. So Ishvara, if Ishvara creates the world, then Ishvara is a very dissatisfied person, right? Which cannot be, according to your own definition. Then also change implies change in subject to time and space, because any change happens only in time and space. So if you say Ishvara has created the world, then Ishvara should be subject to time and space, which means Ishvara is limited by time and space, which is not possible. So like this, he gives a huge list of reasons why Ishvara cannot be the cause of the world. This is only a sample for you. So this is just for want of time, otherwise we can keep, this itself can go for some 5-6 hours. Okay, so these are the kind of problems which we face, right, when we assume this religious model. Okay, so now the Advaitin comes and raises these questions. Then we say, okay, fine, you are refuting my concept, because the first one has refuted the law of karma, free will concept. Second one has refuted the law of Ishvara. So both the basic assumptions which we had made are broken into pieces by the Advaita Vedantin who comes. So then we ask him, okay, fine, it is not sufficient if you just break whatever system which I have. Tell me, do you have an alternative? So then comes to the next paradigm. We come to Advaita. What is the time? 7:10. Till what time do we have? Huh? Okay, fine. Let us see. Let us try to finish and then we can see if we can have some question and answer. Question and answer session, we can even take it outside. Anyway. Okay, so Advaita based on some principles. So I am just quoting from Taittiriya Upanishad. Can show the whole thing. So Brahmavid apnoti param. So Brahmavid. So we'll come to the definition later. So there is some entity called Brahma. Brahmavid, the knower of Brahman, apnoti param. He attains the highest. So simply whatever the question we had, what is the cause of human suffering, what is the state of freedom from suffering, how to attain that, all those three are captured in that one sentence. So Brahmavid apnoti param, not knowing Brahman is the cause of all problems, and the state of freedom from suffering is knowledge of Brahman, and the way to freedom is knowledge of Brahman. So now the question is, okay, so Brahmavid apnoti param, so many words are there, what do they mean? So Taittiriya Upanishad only answer, quotes from Rig Veda. After that, it says, that only. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So the first statement said Brahmavid apnoti param. So now to define that, now Taittiriya Upanishad is in Yajurveda. It quotes from Rig Veda, right? These three mantras are the rest of the four are from Rig Veda. So now Taittiriya Upanishad from Yajurveda quotes Rig Veda there. So it defines Brahman as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that's the definition for Brahman. Now the next question is, okay, fine. So now how do I attain it? Brahma Vid. What does that Vid mean? So it says, Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam. So Nihit Guhayam is heart, that is your own self. So Yo Veda. So Yaha means who. So for now we can just ignore that. So Veda Nihitam Guhayam. So you know it in your own self. So that basically gives the core for all the spiritual practices. So all spiritual practices, the whole crux is yo veda nihitam guhayam. Then, what do you mean by apnoti param? What do you mean by he attains the supreme? The next definition comes, saha ashnute sarvan kaman saha. So he attains all his desires are quenched completely. So that is the definition for apnoti param, right? And it says brahmana vipachiteti. So how does the desires get quenched? It says because everything is Brahman. Brahman is what? So basically it defines the Brahma with apnoti param. Then it starts breaking down into each component and it defines them, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma and all that. Then actually this Valli of the further slokas there, the further mantras in Satyam Upanishad is basically explanation of each of these things. So the Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma is explained by this Srishti. The Srishti Vivarana is there, how the universe came. So that way Brahman is defined. And then it talks about the Panchakosha Viveka, which basically describes the other one. Yogaveda Nihitam Guhayam is expanded into the Panchakosha Viveka, is called Vivarana. And then the Soshnite Sarvan Kaman Saha is explained as the Ananda Mimamsa, which describes about what is happiness and all that. So the rest of this particular Valli is explanation of these concepts. So that way, from one mantra, it keeps expanding it step by step into more and more. So now, here we will just take only this one sentence, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, for which we will analyze for the rest of the talk. So now Satyam is existence. Okay. So now what is existence? So now the Veda says we have our perception has limitations. Now we are human beings. Now our perception of sound is basically from 2 kilohertz to 2000 kilohertz. Below that we cannot hear, above that we cannot hear. Our perception of light is from red to violet. Infrared and below we cannot see, ultraviolet and above we cannot see. Our perception of smell is to a limited extent. So, whereas there are other creatures who can see well into the infrared and well into the ultraviolet, and so the world which they see is totally different. The colors they see is totally different. What looks contrasting to us will be, what looks camouflage to us, two same colors. Suppose there is a leaf, suppose let us say like there is a green carpet on which there is a green leaf lying. Now when we look at it, we cannot actually discern the leaf from the carpet because for us both are green. But when a bird looks at it, the bird can see into the infrared also. Now the infrared signature of the leaf is different from the carpet because the temperatures are different. So the bird can very clearly see the leaf and the carpet differently. So what is actually camouflage to our eyes is very clear contrast to a bird. So like this, even if suppose for example a cat enters the room, the cat has got very good sense of smell. So looking at the different smells in our bodies, the cat will be able to tell who has come from where. For example, when the cat smells my body, because I have traveled through the Bangalore traffic, it can smell all the smoke and dust. So it will really be able to clearly identify in this hall who have traveled from outside and come in and who are coming from within the campus, which we cannot distinguish. So our senses are very limited, and because of which the world which we see is totally different from the world which another living being can see. And even our moods affect our perception. We saw, right, like our hormones affect the perception, right? If I have some alcohol gets into my blood, then the world I see is totally different. So basically, like our perception is so different. And so what exactly is the fundamental reality, right? What is really there? Because we are able to see this world only because of our five senses are limited to this. Now a shark which swims in this ocean, it has got electrical sensors all over its body. Even in 1 kilometer far away, suppose if there is a fish swimming, the electrical pulse in the nerves of those fish will be picked up by the shark. It can identify its prey. Any live prey it can identify by the electrical pulses in the nerves because it has got an electrical sensor on its skin. So the world which is seen with more senses is totally different from the world which is seen by our senses. So now the question is, the world which we see, how real it is? because it is subject to the limitations of our instruments. So that is pointed out very clearly in the scriptures, in the Upanishads. So they say like what you see is actually what is shown to you by your body senses only. The world outside your body and mind is outside your senses and mind can be different. You have no way to access it. Right? Now the question is, what is existence? And then all properties are emergent. This is a beautiful concept which is there in the Mandukya Karika. Now it says, see, let me put it in modern language. So now we say, okay, this is brown color. Now if from this level I see this brown color. If I take an electron microscope and look at it, will I see brown? I won't. Because this brown color is from the way the electrons here absorb and reflect the light which falls on it. Now when I look at it through an electron microscope, there is no concept of brown there. Right? Because what I see is all intermolecular spaces. This appears to me as solid. But if I look into an electron microscope, this is 99% of empty space only. Right? So, and if you go step by step below, so you have so now at the top level you have mass, you have velocity. Okay, mass is something which is very fundamental. If you take temperature for example, right? If I say, okay, this has this temperature. Now the temperature actually is not an intrinsic property of this metal. The temperature is caused by the way the vibrations are there, right? So if you look at the metal itself at the atomic level, there is no concept of temperature there at all. And so at the atomic level, at least I have a concept of its chemical properties because the number of electrons is spinning around. Now if I go beyond that, if I go to the electron itself, does the electron have a property of oxidation? Suppose, let us say, for example, we have I take one wood and I take it on fire. We say, okay, this is getting oxidized. Now, oxidized is getting burnt, right? So now the concept of burning is there. Now, if we go at a molecular level, now burning or oxidation is nothing but losing electrons. If a particular atom loses electrons, then it is getting oxidized. And if a particular molecule or what do you call it? Radical. If a radical gains electrons, then it is getting reduced. So burning has got a totally different meaning at a molecular level. Now if I go still further to the level of quarks and leptons, now there is no concept of all these emergent concepts like temperature and length and width and all those things basically don't apply at the lower level, right? So every property of objects which we have, be it color or sound or temperature, texture, all these things are basically emergent phenomena. They are emergent from the constituent parts, but the constituent parts themselves don't have that particular property. Classical example is water, right? We use water to put off fire, but water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen is combustible and oxygen supports combustion. But together water has totally different property, it puts off fire. So that way if you look at it, every property, right, comes because of a combination in a particular way of the constituents. Okay. Now up to this we are talking science. So now Vedanta makes a huge intellectual leap. It says every property is an emergent phenomena. The fundamental substance, whatever you call it as, cannot have any properties. Because anytime you have a property, the property is only because of some emergent phenomena of some combination. So as long as you are talking about properties of things, it only means that you have not yet reached the rock bottom of the fundamental entity. We are talking about theory of everything. What is that? But that substance out of which the entire universe is made of. So now Vedanta makes an intellectual leap. It makes an extrapolation, an assumption. It's an assumption, but it's a very coherent, logical, very well guessed assumption. It says, as long as you see properties, you have not yet reached the fundamental substance out of which the entire universe is made of. Because by extrapolation, it says every property has to be an emergent phenomena, and so the fundamental substance is free from all properties. Now, this is a big assumption, though logical. Okay. Now, this has got a huge amount of corollaries. So now what is the next? This is what we discussed. Okay, you can go. So now this is called Nirguna. So the fundamental entity out of which the entire universe is made of has to be Nirguna, which is free from properties. Because all properties are emergent phenomena. What does this mean? It means Nirguna implies Nirvikara. Because any change we see in this world is only change of properties. Right? Any change of anything is only a change of properties. So that which has no properties has to be mandatorily Nirvikara. So I'll give you an example. So now, for example, this table has a length. Now, length is a property. Now, why do we say the length is a property? Because in this space, the table is there. In this space, the table is not there. Right? So there is a change of property. And because of change of property, I can move this table here and there. Right? So basically, when something changes, anything that changes, whether it be physically or even mentally, any change is basically a change of properties. And so, something which doesn't have any property, there is nothing to change there, so it has to be changeless. Nirvikara. Now that leads us to the next corollary. That which doesn't change cannot change with space or time. Right? So any change, right, is only change in space and time. So moment we say this doesn't change, it is free from space and time. Right? When you say change with respect to space, now this table is here and is not here. So it is a change with respect to space. And my hand is here now it is not there. So it is a change with respect to time, as far as this particular space is concerned. So any change of anything, right, is only subject to space and time. So moment we say something doesn't change, it is beyond space and beyond time. The concept of space and time don't apply to it. So we say it is Nitya and Sarvagataha. Okay. Now it also has to be single, because we identify one object from another object only based on its properties. One object is different from another object only based on its properties. So suppose if there is a substance which has no properties, there cannot be two of them, there can be only one of them. Right? It has to be Ekam, it can be only one. So moment you have made that axiom that the fundamental substance is Nirguna without any properties, then all these corollaries follow. So it has to be free from change, and it has to be Nitya, Sarvagataha, and it has to be Ekam. It has to be only one. It has to be single unique entity only. Now, you can go to the next one. So this is about the substance. Now we'll go about to the next one, Jnanam. So we saw Satyam, Jnanam. So now Satyam, we defined what is Satyam. Satyam is existence. So Satyam is the fundamental substance out of which everything else is made, is called Satyam. So now we'll go to Jnanam. Jnanam means consciousness. So we'll try to find what is Jnanam. So let us talk about the subject-object relationship. So this is what I'm telling you now is straight picked out of one book called Drishyasya Viveka, written by one Shankaracharya. So now, whenever you have a subject-object relationship, now let us say for example, I am seeing this as brown color. Now when I want to see something as brown color, then my identity has to come all the way till the instrument, which is my eyes in this case, and then being my eyes, identifying myself up to my eyes, I say this is brown. Okay. So the color is an object. So this desk is an object, and my subjecthood extends till my eyes, and I judge the property of this object as brown. Now suppose if I say, okay, I am seeing everything blurred. Maybe I have myopia, I have short sight, I have long sight, I have color blindness. Now I am judging my eyes. Now to judge my eyes have become an object. Now being my subject, if my subjectivity extends till my eyes, I cannot judge my eyes. I have to put one step backwards and identify myself with my mind, and my mind can judge my eyes and gauge the properties of my eyes as either short sight or long sight or color blindness. So now my eyes are object. So to be able to judge anything, it has to be made into an object first. Fine. And I have to remain the subject, and then I can judge an object, and I can judge the property of the object. So this is the whole concept of subject-object relationship. So if I say, okay, no, I am angry, right? I am very perturbed, I am disturbed. Now, to be able to judge my mind as angry or perturbed or disturbed, I have to again put one step back and make my mind into an object. I have to objectify my mind, then I can do that. So now, Vedanta makes an intellectual leap. It says, okay, so who am I? I will define I. It says, I am that ultimate subject which can never become an object. So you can, next one, right? So, this is the definition of I in this paradigm. I am that ultimate subject which can never become an object. If I say I am dash, the moment I fill in something in that dash, this is no longer I, because it's already objectified. So if I say I am this body, now the body is objectified. So which means I, the subject, is different from the body. Right? So the definition of I is that entity, right, which can never be an object of either perception or conception or imagination or whatever it is. So the definition of I is, I am that ultimate subject. In this, if you keep on putting one step back in this subject-object relationship, I am that entity which can never become an object, which is the ultimate subject. So moment I have defined me as this, then what's the corollary? As we saw, properties belong to only objects. To be able to judge the property of any entity, I have to first objectify it. And then the property of that object can be determined. So now when I have defined I to be the ultimate subject which can never be an object, right? Then what happens? I have to be free from property, right? So what is the nature of I, the ultimate subject? It has to be same whatever we saw before. Moment I have declared that I as a subject is free from properties, nirguna, then whatever we saw before fall through. So I, the real I who is the subject, who can never become an object, which is called the consciousness, right, has to be nirguna, and nirguna means nirvikara, nirvikara means nitya, sarvagataha and ekam. Fine? So this is the logical sequence. So now if this is what is I, the pure consciousness, right, then what is the consequence? Comes to Advaitam, Jnanam equal to Satyam. So we analyzed Satyam, what is existence, the ultimate substance out of which this entire universe is made of, what is the fundamental substance, and we arrived at the same Nirguna, Nirvikara, everything. Finally, Ekam is also very important. And when we try to find out who am I am the subject which can never become an object, then also we came to the same conclusion as Nirguna, Nirvikara, etc. and Ekam. So now there cannot be two Ekams, there cannot be two entities which are Nirguna. So Satyam equal to Jnanam. So I, the pure consciousness, is the fundamental substance out of which this entire universe is made of. This is the logical conclusion arrived at by Advaita Vedanta. So this is the very important conclusion, right? I, the consciousness, is the fundamental substance of this entire universe. So now we'll try to go one more step further, right? So now we have this hall, and we say there is space in this hall. Then we say there is space outside the hall also. Now the space within the hall is not different from the space outside the hall. It's the same space. Just that we have a boundary, some four walls are there, because of which the space appears as divided. But actually space is qualityless. There is always space and consciousness are usually taken as analogies. Upanishads, the scriptures, Gita, everywhere. Whenever you want to understand this concept of consciousness, Brahman, space is taken as the example, because space is the closest we can get to this concept of this uniformity and free from properties. Now, the space outside and space inside are the same. So, which means the whole thing is inverted. Space is not within the hall, but hall is within the space. Right? Space is inside the hall, space is outside the hall. Space inside the hall is not different from space outside the hall. So, space actually is not divided. The division of space is only apparent because of the walls. And so, the conclusion is space is not inside the hall, but hall is actually inside space. Clear, right? So, the same thing you apply now. Go to the next one. Right? So, space is not in the hall. So, now what about the universe? So, the universe is not, I am not in the universe, but universe is in me. Because this Satyam Jnanam unified entity is all that it is. That is what is me, and that is the substance out of this entire universe is made of. So, now what is the relationship between me and the universe? Now, here you have to be very careful, me with a capital M. Don't think, I should not identify myself with this body and mind, then I am limited. This applies only as long as I consider myself as the pure subject which can never be an object. The Gita uses this beautiful word for that, aprameya. Prameya means object. Aprameya means that which can never be an object. So the word used for the Atman or Brahman or this I is aprameya, that which can never be objectified. So when that is what is I, then this is what happens. Now then the question comes, okay, then how does this world exist? I say like, I am the pure consciousness, the substance is also pure nirguna, I am nirguna, the world is nirguna, then where did all this guna come from? So this is the question which we naturally have. So that is where Advaita introduces the concept of Maya. You can go next. So Maya has to be understood by an analysis of finite and infinite. So Maya is a very beautiful concept, right? So you can go to the next one. So let us take an example as a number line. So we have all of us from schools, you have put now, like put a number line and say 0, 1, 2, 3, we keep on marking and then arrow goes to infinity. So now this is a number line. So now this concept of infinity and finite comes here, which is an example which we can use. And in fact, Mandukya Karika uses a very similar example. And so not in terms of number line, but it uses in terms of the existence. And whatever I brought here is actually in the Mandukya Karika, just that it's a modern word which we can understand. So now in the number line, if you see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and all that. If I say, okay, fine, if I keep on counting, where will I go to? So then we have this concept called infinity, right? Which is infinity is basically like whatever is there at an infinite distance, right? At an infinite counting, whatever is there is infinity. So now when we have this concept of infinity, first question I ask is, does infinity exist? Very, very important question. We say counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will go to infinity. Infinity is a concept. Now if I ask the question, does infinity exist? I cannot deny it. I think yes, it has to be there. Infinity is there. I may not be able to comprehend it, but it is there. Fine. So infinity exists. Good. Then I ask you, what is infinity minus 1 and infinity minus 2, are they same or different? Infinity minus 1 and infinity minus 2, are they same or different? Now I say like, no, it is infinity. So infinity minus 1 is infinity, infinity minus 2 is infinity. So infinity minus anything finite is infinity. So now then I ask, if infinity minus 1 and infinity minus 2 are the same, then from infinity point of view, are 1 and 2 same or different? From infinity point of view, are 1 and 2 same or different? Now, from infinity point of view, 1 and 2 are infinitesimally together, and infinitesimally together means actually they are not different. So, from infinity point of view, 1 and 2 are actually not different. That is why infinity minus 1 is equal to infinity minus 2. So, from this finite point of view, when we start counting from 1, 2 and 3, infinity is something which exists. But from infinity point of view, if you look back, the finite doesn't exist. 1 and 2 are not distinct. There is no difference between 1 and 2 from the infinity point of view. But from finite point of view, infinity is there. So now the question is, from the absolute sense, Now statements are there. Does finite exist? Does infinite exist? Infinite exists both from infinity point of view and finite point of view. Finite exists only from finite point of view but not from infinity point of view. So we say infinity has got absolute existence and finitude has got only a relative existence. Clear? This is the concept. So infinity exists, infinite exists from the point of view of finite. Finite does not exist from the point of view of infinite. This concept is called Maya. Any time you bring in finite and infinite together, the concept of Maya has to be brought in. Otherwise, there is no way to link finite and infinite together. Clear? So, another example I'll tell you, like from physics. Now we say, according to physics, the whole universe, right, is homogeneous and isotropic at the large scale. So, at the large scale, it is homogeneous, means that like no 2 points can be distinguished from each other in a large scale. Isotropic means in every direction it is the same. So the universe is homogeneous and isotropic at a large scale accepted by physics. Now if the universe is homogeneous and isotropic, then how are you and I here? If the universe is homogeneous and isotropic, any two different points in space have to be the same. But at this point in space I am there, at that point in space you are there. Which means the universe at the small scale is not homogeneous and isotropic, but at the large scale it is homogeneous and isotropic. So this is the concept, right? So suppose, you can put it in another word. Suppose if everything has come from the Big Bang, from a point of view of singularity. From one point if everything has come, then the whole universe has to be uniform. Where did this variation come from? How are you and I here? Why is the desk here? Why is the chair there? If everything has come from a single point, why are they there? So we have all this explanation of inflation and all those things, and we say like if the universe is homogeneous and isotropic even at smaller points, then Heisenberg's principle will get violated, because if 2 points are absolutely same, then it is measurable, then your Heisenberg's principle will get violated, Pauli's exclusion principle will get violated, all laws of physics will get violated. And so we say universe is not homogeneous and isotropic at the smaller level. Now this is like putting the cart before the horse, right? So look, the summary is like when you put together the finite and the infinite together, you cannot come to a logical explanation of why they are there in that way. So why is finite existing? There is no logical answer to it. If you look at it from the whole point, from the infinite point of view, either in physics or in mathematics, take any field for that matter, moment you come to a concept and start analyzing this concept of infinity will show that finitude doesn't exist. Because from the point of view of infinity, finite cannot exist. But still we are there. How it is existing? So that is what Advaita says, Maya. Maya is just a name. Vivekananda puts in a very nice way. He says, Maya means I don't know. Maya is just a sophisticated way of saying I don't know. But it is there, right? It cannot be explained logically, but experientially it is there. How it is there, you don't know, so you call it as Maya. Okay? So now, extend this to the universe. The same concept, extended to the universe. So universe exists only from the point of view of finite. It has a relative dependent existence on the infinite. Fine? So this is what is Advaita about. So we analyze Satyam, right? We analyze Jnanam, and we analyze this concept of how does finite come. So next slide. So now the summary of Advaita, Shankara puts in a very nice way. Brahma Satyam, we saw, right? Brahman, Satyam is basically the substance. So it means the substance out of which the entire universe is made of is infinite, right? Jagat Nitya. The finitude which you see is only relative. It's only relative truth. It's Maya. Jivaha Brahmaiva na paraha. So Jivaha is Jnanam, that is I and the universe, the Brahman, at the ultimate level are not different. We already proved that. Satyam equal to Jnanam. So which means the Jiva Jagat Ishvara model which we saw in the religion. So when we saw the previous paradigm, we talked about law of karma, jiva, jagat, Ishvara is there, Ishvara creates jagat for the benefit of jivas and all that. So that is not negated, but it is valid only in the relative realm. So by this concept of Maya links Advaita and this Dvaita, right? So Advaita says everything is only absolute, only infinite exists, finite doesn't exist. But in practical reality, we see finitude exist. So Maya is the concept which links them both. So we say Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara exists in the finite realm, in the Vyavaharika realm, right? In the empirical world, it exists. But in the Paramarthika, that is in the absolute sense, they don't exist. Okay? So now coming back, who am I? As an individual. Me as an individual standing and talking here, what is my position now? So Advaita says it's an illusion. Because it's Maya, right? All finitude is Maya, which includes my individuality. So my individuality as this body-mind complex, the holder of the free will, as a finite individual, is an illusion. What is reality is my individuality as the pure jnanam, pure consciousness, that is what is absolute. So now what is moksha? Giving up the reality attributed to the concept of individuality is called moksha. So now giving up the reality attributed to my concept of individuality. Individuality exists in the finite realm, but the reality which is attributed to that has to be given up. Simple example is like we all know that sun doesn't rise. It's the earth which keeps rotating. But every day at sunrise we get up and start doing our work. So we acknowledge sunrise, though it is only an appearance. So for the Vyavaharika, for the empirical world, sunrise is a reality. But in the back of our mind, we know for sure that sun doesn't rise. So because of that, we don't have any doubt that tomorrow sun will rise or not. You don't have a doubt. Because sun doesn't rise, the earth only rotates. Right? So basically, the same concept is applied to me. I as an individual is okay for the Vyavaharika, for the transactions. But at an absolute level, I should know for sure that me as an individuality is an illusion. I as a ultimate existence is the reality. Right? So this understanding, complete conviction and put into practice every day is called as moksha. So moksha is not something to be attained. Moksha is already there, just you have to understand it. So we saw the problem with moksha if it starts, right? Suppose if the chain of janma and karma stop and then that is defined as moksha starting, then that moksha becomes finite. Whereas we say moksha is always there, but just that you don't know it. You are free, but you don't know that you are free. And so you think you are bound, and so you start getting into all kinds of limitations. So this is the position of Advaita. So it becomes logically coherent. So can go. So again, so whatever we saw, you can just skip through. So whatever we saw. So this is actually like this slide basically covers all the concepts we have done in a much more detailed way. So we'll come to it. If there is any questions, we'll skip it for now. So now coming to the 6 questions. So what is the nature of the individual? So we say the individuality is an illusion. The individual at the absolute sense is actually infinite. What is the nature of the universal? The universal is, when you say universal, it is the totality. So totality also we say, totality as nirguna is real, but totality as saguna, that is with properties, is a superimposition. It is only for practical transaction use. What is the nature of the insentient world? Again, it is answered, right? And when you say this sentient and universal, you can just go back. So this actually, this is a picture of the world. So now on the right side is the samashti, the macrocosm. Okay, let us not get into details. So all the relative existence put together is called Ishvara. We already saw, and all the individualities, the Vyashti, put together is called the Jiva, the individual. And this differentiation between Ishvara and Jiva exists only at the relative level, when you look at it at the fundamental level, Atman, which is the pure existence, pure consciousness, at that level, the infinite and the finite, there is no distinction, and so essentially there is no difference between Ishvara and Jiva. So at the relative level, at the Vyavarika level, difference is there. Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara are different, but at the ultimate sense, they are same. So that is what explains the individual and the universal. So when I say universal, it is a sentient totality. Now, why is there human suffering? Because I have a misunderstanding that I am finite. Instead of considering myself as the pure jnanam, pure consciousness, I think I am this body-mind complex, and so I have suffering. So, what is the state beyond suffering? The state is here and now. I am already free from suffering. It's only a misconception. So, how to get there? By understanding my true nature, by inquiry, and once I understand this is what it is, then it has to get implemented in everyday life. Just by knowing that, yes, just knowing the words that, okay, I am Aham Brahmasmi, I am infinite, doesn't help, right? So it has to be in everyday life. So we know a lot of doctors who know all the problems of smoking, but they will be chain smokers. It is possible because there is a difference between intellectual understanding and implementing it in everyday life. So the intellectual understanding is only a beginning. Real stuff comes when you start changing your behavior according to that. Okay, fine. So again we'll go to the purpose. So again, dharma, morality. So moment you say everything is one, then there is no distinction between me and others. So even for a selfish person, there is no difference between you and others. So by doing good to others, you are actually doing good to yourself. So that is one of the logics. Another logic is, by following dharma, you actually prepare your mind to be able to assimilate this knowledge. So there are two ways in which dharma is explained for the person. And then moksha, I am infinite, the entire world exists in me. So where is the question of me having any sorrow? Right? This entire world is just a drama happening in front of me, the consciousness. So it is not, I am the constant entity and this world keeps changing and the entire show happens. Right? Fine. So there is one quotation from Einstein, very unexpected source, but if you see it, it is exactly what we have been discussing so far. A human being is a part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature in its beauty. The true value of a human being is determined primarily by the measure and the sense in which they have obtained liberation from this self. Self is the limited self. So whatever we have been discussing so far as Advaita is nothing but what Einstein has put it here. In very different words, but the same concept, same message, everything is same. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so that comes to the end of it. Can do one more. So any questions? And this is my website. So whatever I have spoken, whatever I have written, usually I sort of put it there. So you can find a lot of articles. Typically one article per month keeps coming there. And there are a lot of e-books available, both written by me and borrowed from others. So a lot of stuff are there, you can just go through that. And so I actually, as mentioned by him, I sort of come here for nice discussions every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, 5:30 to 7:30 they meet in the old faculty club. And whatever I told you, all these ideas are mostly crystallized only because of the discussions by all these people here. Because otherwise, unless you have someone to discuss live, ideas will always keep remaining vague and it won't be in a systematic manner. So what has been put in systematically here is mainly thanks to all the guys sitting in the front row, like who have been my guinea pigs and targets for all these discussions. So what we have here is basically an extension of whatever happens every week here. So this is an expanded session, and this is only an outline. We just scratched the surface, and what we discuss is much more deeper and much more in detail, like in terms of like implementation, like what are the hurdles, like various questions, doubts. Like these guys are really like tough audience. They ask a lot of questions. So we keep discussing all these things. Like, so if you're interested, you can join there. I think their phone numbers are there in the pamphlet which is distributed. So now I don't know. I think I've taken a lot of time. So maybe a couple of really disturbing questions which will not let you sleep tonight if you don't get the answer. Only those we can take. And of course, like let the person close the hall, and I'm available for discussion outside on an individual basis. Yeah.
How does philosophy will help us in our day-to-day life? Should we believe in more? How does it motivate us to do good things, do hard work? Like, if we believe in this philosophy, how does it help us in our regular day-to-day life?
I think the question is asking that whatever you have said, suppose I believe everything, or everybody is here and believe everything. So then that will help me to get out of my ego,
Yes.
my anger, my the suffering and suffering.
Exactly. So
do that, or I have to do something extra to reach that.
see, that actually it is both. See, moksha, one definition of moksha is what I told you, right? Asocyan anasocitam, like finally we say, right? Na anasocyanti panditaha, right? So basically it doesn't have any sorrow. Now if you see, what is the human problem in day-to-day life? So Vedanta has described it as 6 enemies. Shat Ripu it is called. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Kama is desire, right? Kama, Krodha is anger, Lobha is greed, Moha is delusion, right? Mada is arrogance, Matsarya is jealousy. Now another definition of moksha is freedom from these 6. Freedom from these 6 is called moksha. Samsara is, these 6 are called samsara. Okay, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya is samsara. Freedom from them is moksha. And the scriptures say these 6 are defects of the mind. These are all psychological defects. Okay, desire, anger, jealousy, they are all psychological defects. Absolute freedom from all these is what is moksha. Okay. Now, why do all these 6 are there? Why are they there? Because now if you see the 6, there are 2, the core of the whole thing is desire. Now we have desires. If the desire gets fulfilled, then we want more, it becomes greed, and we become arrogant. If the desire doesn't get fulfilled, we get angry and we get jealous. So desire is the root for the other 4. Now where does desire come from? Desire comes from a sense of limitedness. I have a desire for something because I feel without that I am not full, I am not complete, I am not satisfied. So desire comes from a sense of limitedness, limitation. Now what here we understand is I am not limited. That is what Advaita keeps banging again and again and again. Saying I am not a limited entity. But let me complete. Okay.
Everything you say, I accept it. Everything you say, I have accepted it. The point is, that is going to come out of my speech.
Yes. That's what I'm coming to. I'm coming to that.
All these things you are saying, I think intellectual level.
I'm coming to that. Okay.
How to get it up?
Yes. Okay. So freedom from limitations, right, is the solution, and this gives theoretically it gives that I'm really free. Now how to do that practically, right? Now practically, how do I free myself out of this individuality? How do I shake myself out of this individuality? So there Vedanta gives a very beautiful thing. It says, see, when I say I am an individual, there are 2 facets to my individuality. One is as a karta, other one is as a bhokta. I express my individuality as a doer, right? As an actor in this world. I do things. And then as a bhokta, as an experiencer, I experience various things in this world. So now my role as karta and bhokta, as a doer and experiencer, these are the two modes in which my individuality manifests itself. Like I interact with this world, so I assume that I am separate from this world. Me and rest of it. Me and the world. And how do I interact with this world? Either I do action or I experience things in this world. So this karta and bhokta are the two modes by which my individuality is manifested. So to get free from this individuality, I have to fix these two. Okay. So there Vedanta says, first you tackle bhokta. Okay. Out of these two, first you handle bhokta. What do you mean by that? My role as an experiencer has to be weakened. Okay. How can I weaken my role as an experiencer? Now when I say experiencer, I do action and I get the fruits of action. I experience the result of my action. So first step is offer that result of action to God. So that is the first step. I say yes, I work in this world, I get the fruits for experience, and to weaken my goal is to weaken my individuality. So first step is to weaken my bhoktritva. The first step in weakening my bhoktritva is to offer the fruits as prasada from the Lord, prasada buddhi. Because we already saw that God, Ishvara is a totality. So whatever I do as an individual is an interaction with the Lord. So it's the Lord who gives the fruits of my action. So as a gratitude, I offer a part of the fruits of my action back to the Lord, saying, "Oh Lord, thank you." Next step, when I start doing this, then I come to realize that it is not that I interact with the world, I get the fruits of action, then I offer to God. It is God Himself who actually gives the fruit of my action. So instead of me working in the world and giving the fruit to God, my work itself actually is an offering to God only, because the Lord is not different from the world. So I go to the next step where my action itself is to the Lord. So whatever I do is for His happiness. Ishvara Prityartham. Okay. So whatever I do in this world, I do it for the Lord, for His joy, for His satisfaction. Fine. So Krishna tells in the Gita, like aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhurevacha. Aham hi, I am sarva yajnanam. Yajna is any activity. Bhokta cha prabhurevacha. I am the Prabhu who gives the result, and I am the bhokta also. I am the enjoyer of your action. So whatever we do is an offering to the Lord. And moment we have come to this level of understanding, bhoktritva is gone. Because I am the karta, the Lord is the bhokta. Bhokta is surrendered already. Moment you consider that every action I do is an offering to the Lord, then Lord becomes the bhokta. So one leg of the individuality is removed. The next leg is kartritva. So kartritva is slightly tougher. So first you give up the bhoktritva, then you go to the next step where kartritva has to be given up. Kartritva is where like you have to surrender your individuality, which means you have to surrender your free will, which again goes to the next step. That is the next step of, this is the first step of bhakti. The next step of bhakti goes to that. So Krishna actually gives 3 steps. So first is surrender the fruits, then surrender the action, then surrender the doership. These are the 3 steps in a graded manner in which the individuality is given up. So these are it's beautifully given in the Gita, like there are given in condensed, it comes in various places, like it's been condensed in 1 shloka, given in 3 shlokas, given in some 3 separate sets of shlokas. The same concept keeps repeating again and again, because fundamentally the ultimate way is to give up your individuality, and it is not easy, and it has to be done step by step, gradually, and Gita gives the detailed steps how to do that.
So the person who has written the Gita, where from he got the knowledge?
From the Veda. Gita itself says.
You can take his question from
Yeah.
Veda.
The knowledge of Veda, where from it is?
The Vedas say that Rishis say so. The Vedas.
The Rishis and they were got knowledge from somewhere. Where is the source actually?
So we say the Vedas are, the knowledge of the Vedas, right, are discovered. Okay. Just like gravity. For example, gravity is a natural phenomenon. Now, before gravity was discovered, gravity was there. So, whatever you formulate as a rule, as Newton's law of gravitation, is only a formulation of a natural phenomenon. Similarly, whatever is there in the Veda, right, and whatever is there in the Veda is only two concepts in the relative level, whatever we saw: free will and the concept of Ishvara. Everything else is corollary. Okay. So, that there is a free will and that there is Ishvara, right, is stated in the Veda as an axiom. Okay. It's a discovery. See, we cannot say it. No. The words we can assume that the words were discovered and put into them that particular form by individuals, of whom we don't know. We don't know who those individuals are. Okay. But the concept itself is eternal. Okay. So I think like maybe there are some others who have got questions. We can take this up separately, individually.
Now my motivation for Atma Vichara, desire for Atma Vichara for Moksha, motivated that there is some infinite Ananda somewhere. But my exposition to Ananda is only through Vishaya Ananda. So is there a relationship between Vishaya Ananda and the ultimate Ananda?
See, we call it as dog-bone philosophy. The Veda gives a very beautiful philosophy. So, yeah, so there is a dog and it finds a very dry bone. How dry? It is bone dry. Right? The dry bone, and the dog goes and bites the bone. And the bone is dry, it doesn't have even an ounce of flesh or blood or anything. But because the dog bites it, the dog bone gums start bleeding because the bone is dry and it keeps poking into its mouth. And because of the blood, the dog gets a taste of blood. And the dog comes to a conclusion: before biting the bone, I did not taste blood. By biting the bone, I taste blood. So the taste of blood comes from the bone. So that is exactly what happens in life. So the Ananda which we experience, it doesn't come from outside. Why? Because the amount of Ananda we get out of an object is directly proportional to the desire we have for it. The more we miss something, the more joy it gives. And to two different people, the same object gives different amounts of joy. And to the same person, today it gives one amount of joy, tomorrow it gives another amount of joy. So, by all these things, analyzing it, the logical conclusion we can arise is the joy actually does not come from the object, but it is only a reflection of my own joy which comes from me. So, the state of desire is nothing but a negative state. And by briefly, temporarily getting in touch with an object, I basically defocus. I defocus from my state of desire, and so my inherent joy is exposed, and I wrongly believe that the joy comes from that object.
Is this Ananda experience in the Manas?
Yes, all Ananda is in the Manas only.
But we say that I am different from the Manas, and I am that Ananda. So
see, the location of experience is Manas. Okay. But the Ananda comes from me originally. I'll give you an example. Now, I tell you, I am hungry. Now, the location of the feeling of hunger is where? In the mind. But mind is not hungry. Hunger is in the stomach. But the experience of hunger is in the mind. And my verbalization of hunger is in the mouth. My thinking of hunger is in the mind. So, just because the location of a thought is in the mind doesn't mean that is the location of the actual experience also. Right? So just because I say I feel happy, right? Yes, happiness is in the mind, but does not mean that the mind is the location of the experience. It's an instrument of experience. But the happiness that it experiences is of the Atman. It's a Karna Sharira, because Atman is Nirguna. So one step below that is Karna Sharira. So that is where the actual happiness exists. Any other question?
That is different from whatever the materialistic happiness.
It is not different. The materialistic happiness is a Ananda Abhasha, we call it. It's a reflection of the inherent happiness. Happiness is in me. And the object is only a hetu, a cause which exposes that happiness. For example, like let us say, now I tell you something in English. You understand English, so listening to that you will feel happy. Someone else who does not understand English, for him it is just sound. It doesn't create any happiness or joy or sorrow in him. So now the happiness, where does the happiness come from? It is not in the words. It is in your understanding of that. And the same message can give happiness to someone and sorrow to someone else. So basically happiness comes from your sense of incompleteness. When it apparently gets fulfilled, you enjoy a temporary state of happiness, which is actually a reflection of the full happiness which is already there in you. The more I feel the lack of a TV, I will be happy when a TV comes home. So does the happiness come from the TV or from me? It is from me only. Because the dog in the house does not feel happy if the TV comes. Because the dog did not feel the lack of TV.
The happiness of Atma is unchangeable.
It's unchangeable. It is absolute.
Yes, that's it. I'm not going to vary from person.
It doesn't vary. It is absolute.
So, other happiness that you said that it is quite freelance, those happiness is...
It's a reflection. It's a reflection. See, basically, desire puts a cloud over your inherent happiness, and by actually satisfying the desire, temporarily the cloud gets removed. Then you feel happy. But then your mind jumps to something else. It starts desiring something else, again closed. So that is why to be able to be happy, either you can satisfy your desire or you can get rid of your desire. There are two ways. Satisfying a desire, ultimately you will find that is not a way to get rid of sorrow, because desire does not get quenched by satisfying it. It is like trying to quench a fire by pouring petrol into it. It will only become bigger. The only way, finally, like after all these experiences, the only conclusion you'll come to is, okay, fine. The only way to become happy is not to satisfy a desire, but to drop the desire itself. Then, moment you drop the desire, then the natural happiness gets exposed in its full measure. So, Taittiriya Upanishad in the Ananda Mimamsa, there's a beautiful description which says like different levels of Ananda, and at every level it says the same Ananda is got by a person who has got Vairagya. Shastriya so kamayata. Right?
In deep sleep, there is no mind, and very most happy when you are...
Yeah, in deep sleep, basically there is ignorance. So the mind is defunct for some time. So basically the covering of the desire is not there. So when you get up, you feel that, okay, like you are happy.
But in that state also I am happy.
You are happy. That's what no one says, I had a good sleep, I suffered a lot. No one says. Right? Everyone enjoys sleep. So now the question is, can you get that same happiness which you get in deep sleep even when you are awake? That is exactly what we are talking about. If you remove the desire, then the same happiness which you have in deep sleep can be got here and now while awake.
Related to deep sleep, what if I can change every day?
No, see, basically that's what. So you are asleep, it's a state, right? Anything which is a state has a beginning and an end. So that is not what you want. You can't be sleeping all through, right?
The last question is, unintentional harm. So now, long-term, based on intention or action?
Intention.
You gave an example for the others in morning.
For?
Others in morning. We will say some of your friends experience something, and based on the experience we decide to do. Right? So that is the experience is limited. So from the neuroscience perspective, so my neural specificity can be evolved from each childhood. So my action is based on the neural specificity what I have right now. So can I define in terms of the evolution of neural specificity itself?
Yeah, you can say, like, see, basically relationship between brain and thoughts, right? Now, which is the cause, which is the effect? So the example which we typically give is of a transistor radio, right? So now, if you have a radio, FM radio, now a song comes out of the FM radio. Now, if I ask, does this song come out of the radio, or is it comes from elsewhere? Now, the answer is both. Now, without the signal in the air, this radio cannot give the song, and without this radio, there is no way for me to transact with the song. So this radio is basically a means by which the song which is there in the air is manifested, and the quality of the song which I get, right, depends on the quality of the radio. If I have a poor receptor, then I will have a very weak song, like a very disturbed song. So surely the brain, the chemistry of the brain, the electricity of the brain, as you told, like alcohol and hormones, everything affect my thinking. But that does not mean brain is the sole cause of the thought. The brain is only a manifestation of a thought which is at the abstract level. That is what we first saw. What are all the problems in a pure materialistic system, right? So when we don't accept that, then we have to accept that there is a free will which is independent of my body and mind. Because if you say the free will is dependent on the physical entities, then it is not free will at all. The very concept of free will, the free there means like freedom from the body and mind. It can never be a part or a property or a product of body and mind. That's the very definition of free will. And free will, as I said, is based on intention. And if you have limitations in understanding, limitations in memory, limitations in your thinking, it's okay. With all those limitations, with what intention do you make a decision is what matters. So you want to, I think we'll wind up. Anyway, I'll be available